Hello. Oh, I think you muted. Or maybe it's not time yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I fixed it right now. Thanks for letting me know. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. I wanted to tell you thank you very much for joining our community today.
For sure. No, I'm like really happy to be here and be able to chat with everyone. So it's my pleasure.
That's awesome to hear. Well, for everyone that's joining right now, we want to tell you that we will be going on the first episode of the PodSNARK, and our special guest is Ivan. So we're very excited to have you here. Now, we started some crowdsourcing questions from the community, and we were hoping we can go over them during this podcast with you. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Now, the biggest question that the community really wants to know is, what made you start with Mina? Like, how did this all start? Like, that's like what everybody really wants to know from you.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting to me about this as well is like I think a lot of the times when I'm doing anything anyway, it just kind of like feels like the right thing to do. And then I realize in retrospect, like, oh, actually there were like complicated reasons why I was doing this. Um, I think for me, I was really interested in a couple things in particular. One is just technology. Like I had been programming by the time I started Mina for what, like 8, 10 years, something like that, since like high school. And I was really, really into programming and really loved technology and I loved computer science. And I especially loved the kind of technology that is involved in cryptocurrencies because you have all these different components that are I really love thinking about systems thinking and all the different ways components can interact. And that was exactly what cryptocurrency felt like to me at the time. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I think another half of it was I was very interested in thinking about how people work and how societies function and how to those societies. I didn't realize this second. I in time have come to appreciate that as a big reason why I got into crypto and why I started Mina was because I
Mm-hmm.
care deeply about how to individual a cryptocurrency really back to society and what is a good technical properties of cryptocurrency to enable that to be possible.
Awesome. So that really got you started in this whole crypto world and learning a bit more about how Mina is gonna be changing the world in through crypto.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. It's been clarifying for me to kind of work through my own thoughts and figure this out because like it helps me also like think through what I care about, which is nice. But sorry.
All right. No, that's great. Can you tell us a bit more, like, what exactly is 22 kilobytes in Mina? I know a lot of people ask you about that question, but we really in the community also want to know a bit more about that, because that's like on the homepage and, everybody talks about that, about Mina.
Yeah. So the idea, this gets back just like the idea of Mina, is that what am I doing when I'm accessing cryptocurrency? I am trying to securely and with full guarantees, formal guarantees, know that the information I'm looking at and the way I'm interacting with the cryptocurrency is correct. And usually the way you do this is by running a full node, which requires downloading all this data and continuing to keep your node updated with all the new blocks that are entering the network. And it's a very resource intensive process that I can't run on my browser or my phone or really even my computer if I'm a normal person that closes it every night and things like that. So anyway, this is to say that so the 22 kilobytes is the data you need to perform those operations I was mentioning. It includes the proof of the blockchain up till now, both the current set of all the accounts and all of the consensus information since Genesis. And it includes the paths down to, I think, it's a few accounts. So you can say, here's my account, and here's a proof of how it relates back to the proof of like the whole chain. Here's maybe another couple other accounts I want to interact with. So it's the data you need to download to be able to know that you're interacting with the real state of Mina. And what's really cool is it's a sync and it just stays 22 kilobytes. But that's what it is. Yeah.
that's probably like the coolest thing about it, that, you know, it doesn't, like other blockchains, keeps expanding, so it really stays the same size. That's awesome. Thank you. Well, we're going to be going now over the crowdsourced questions from the community. Now, a lot of people have been asking recently, like they feel in the community that Mina's transfer speed is a bit slow. Is there any solution that Mina's currently working on that to improve in the future? And what speed are you hoping to achieve? What do you expect?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to when you're launching a mainnet, you have to ask yourself, well, okay, launching mainnet's really good because it gets us to be a place where we can start learning really, really fast and know exactly what to prioritize and be able to really like iterate the right way. And you have to set criteria around which TPS do we want to like test for to consider that to be viable for launch. And the TPS we chose for this is one TPS. We got there by looking at the usage data from lots of other chains and seeing that people are saying their capacity is really high, usage is lower. So anyway, just background on that. But what is it actually like to scale Mina? Because yeah, like I agree, like, you know, maybe this is okay right now. Maybe it's okay for 6 months, but like, is this okay? Like, you know, if Mina's like, you know, everywhere and like on everyone's devices, like no, like one TPS is like way too short. So how do we get there? So for one, we know that we know that this is not a theoretical problem because we've seen other cryptocurrencies be able to scale their networking under tests to many, many, many TPS. And there's a question of like what architecture you're going to choose for this. If you want it to be like kind of fully GossipNet distributed, maybe you can get up to like at least like, you know, 100 or so TPS or a little more pretty easily from a networking perspective. So it seems like we'll be able to do the same with Mina. We just have to start testing and, you know, kind of ramping up the TPS and testing it over time. So there's kind of a straightforward path in terms of just iterating on the networking stack and making it do that. So the other half of it, which I think is especially cool for Mina, is there is maybe a shortcut to scaling, which I think is particularly cool, which is being explored now around what if each account is basically like a little ZK rollup. So you don't actually have to apply, you know, 10,000 transactions to an account to update the account with those 10,000 transactions. Instead, what you can do is you can do some really cheap sequencing on blocks of saying, hey, whoever comes along next, I'm putting a request out to put 10,000 transactions out on this particular account. And then in a single transaction, someone can roll those all up and do that update. So we're still exploring this, but like it seems like if each account is itself a ZK rollup, you kind of are done with, you know, it's one TPS, but each TPS would be like per account. Or like, you know, one TPS gets you as many TPS as you want per account. So really you're getting like one account can be updated as many times as you want per second. But anyway, so we're, yeah. Sorry, yeah, it's very cool. So being explored, there's lots of good routes to explore because of zero knowledge proofs in particular is like the summary I would say here. And I think this is something where like I totally get it. Like it would be awesome if everything was just kind of like future proofed and like, you know, it's like, oh, it's like, you know, it's perfect. But at the same time, like usage and getting use cases out seems to be just as important. And it's where we're choosing to spend time at the moment. But there are these awesome routes to scaling that we're exploring in parallel. And I think because we're seeing such concerns from the community, we are prioritizing more than we expected to make sure people know that that capacity is waiting for the protocol as we get there.
Okay, that's really, thank you for that. You know, a lot of people were asking that question, so we're very happy to get an answer from you about that, and that you're, you know, working on exploring some ways, very cool ways to scale Mina. All right, thank you for that. We're going to be moving to the second question asked by the community as well. A lot of people have been asking in the community, is Mina going to always be an inflationary coin forever, or do you have any plans to make it deflationary in later years or anything like that? When, for example, it grows a lot, do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, so I think for one, when I scroll through comments, sometimes I would tell people like, you know, go back to like our token economics post. Like, I think some people have an idea of the inflation that's like more than it is. But anyway, that said, I think that, yeah, like, I think that the default plan is the way we kind of set this thing up, we were like, okay, like we need make sure there's incentives for staking. Let's like have some steady state on staking that we're like very confident is enough to make things continue to be enough incentive to stake. So we're like, okay, 7%. Let's just like have that as like the kind of eventual like thing to make sure 7%. I think that said, we're seeing a couple things happening that are really interesting around maybe, well, maybe like, 7% is like too high in staking, and like the idea has always been let's like keep as a community lowering that over time and like see where the trade-off is between staking participation and the inflation rate, and let's find the number that everyone's happy with where we get sufficient participation but the inflation rate lower. So I am completely pro continuing to lower that, kind of indefinitely with our staking. Yeah. I think on the other hand, what we're seeing as well, which is like the fee markets are picking up in a very substantial way, where you can imagine worlds now where you either have 0% inflation or even negative inflation, as the fee markets make it sufficiently incentivized to run nodes even without any inflation. So I feel like that's the world that we have to like kind of end up in, and I am pro that world. I think this is like something that we'll have to figure out in time as we like kind of get to like the inflation schedule lowers, and then we have to like ask ourselves what to do. But like I'm completely pro like lowering it at some point. So I don't know.
That's good to hear. So it's definitely something that you believe in, and hopefully in the future that we can explore in Mina.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, all right. That's great. That's something a lot of people have been asking. So we're very happy to get an answer on that from you. We know that Mina, it's working on use cases for privacy. So we were thinking to ask if you're working on any dataless privacy login features for the internet, for example, to reach out the masses through Telegram, eBay, Amazon, these big social media platforms or retail platforms, to use the Mina blockchain for login privacy as a use case. Do you think that could happen in the future?
Totally. So the way that I often think about this stuff is I want to make sure that the stuff I'm supporting is stuff that like both feels like it like kind of shares the vision, but also like is something that's going to be immediately useful. And I don't think that users are in a place yet where they can take advantage of that fully yet. However, I do think that will be the case, in a matter of like sort of time, like maybe like if I'm really optimistic, like 1 to 2 years, and we're definitely thinking about it. And I think OF1's thinking about this as like a prototype as it's like building out snaps. I think one kind of twist on this that like I think needs to like be investigated more as like a product, but like I just want to like kind of seed the ideas, like wallets that use this so that you don't need to think about private keys as much. So like it's kind of like a login solution / like MetaMask kind of.
Great.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool.
That would definitely be really cool.
And it's also like kind of like a part one, because like we need like maybe like not everything on the internet is like integrated yet with like zero knowledge proofs and Mina and everything, but like at least like we have like a really good wallet that takes advantage of like all the features of Mina and can live online as like a step one to that, and then we plug in the logins to that later.
That would be very cool. Would that be possibly integrated with, for example, other wallets that are currently, people can stake Mina on them right now, or will this wallet just come from the Mina Foundation? Like, just for you?
I think we definitely intend to like, help and partner with people to like make things like this happen. But like, yeah, it's going to be like, we're not like going to develop things like that internally. Like we just want to help support other people on it. I think like kind of the part one to that is we want to have like this like WASM enabled Mina full node, and so like we're supporting the chain safe work to help make that happen. And then that's like a prerequisite that any other wallet developer can then like take their library and plug it into their wallet, and then they get access to Mina when they're building their wallet. And there could be many wallets. It's not like so once the library exists.
Oh, okay. That's very cool. That's very cool. Thank you for telling us a bit more about this wallet, and that you're very committed on expanding in the development community. One question though that we have some developers, a lot of people that want to learn as well, is Mina working with Rust?
Yeah. So ChainSafe's building a Rust client with Mina.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the question comes to when it comes to, for example, coding and programming in Mina, will it be easy, or would it only be available, for example, people that are very experienced in coding and programming and working for blockchain? A lot of people are interested, in developing on Mina and learning to work on Mina. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So for this to happen, someone's going to have to port Snarky to Rust. So I hope, like, this might be an oversimplification. So like, I hope people don't kill me, but like, this is basic. This is true. We basically used Snarky with OCaml to make the first version of Mina possible. So, like, we had to write a lot of Snark code, and Snarky was the way we did this in OCaml. And what everyone's doing now is it's basically writing a version of Snarky with a lot of additions, which is why I say, like, I know it's not just port, it's a little more than that, to make Snarky work in JavaScript, so that people can use JavaScript to use Snarky. I think that the next step would be to use Rust, is for someone to port Snarky to Rust. And if someone, then it's done. Like, you can do this all from Rust, but someone has to write that port first. So I mean, like, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Do you think we can see that this year? Or that's something for later on?
I mean, like, timelines are hard, so I think we'll see we'll like almost definitely see the JavaScript version of Snarky by this year. But like, we haven't, like, like, no one's, I don't think, working right now, unless, like, someone's doing secretly, which would be cool also, on a Rust version of Snarky. So I if there is support demand for, like, other languages besides JavaScript, I can imagine, like, that being like a next year thing, after, like, it's like, okay, like, here's Snarky.js, here's what it would look like to port this to Rust. People want this. Like, someone actually, like, wants to do it, that, like, knows all these technologies. Then it could happen. But, like, Rust would probably be next year, after we have the JavaScript version happen.
Yeah, that's understandable, so step by step, and then hopefully something by next year. Okay, that's very awesome. We know that another question from the community is that we know that, Mina's working on snaps, and it's basically like the apps with ZK Snark, and it's Mina's own creation. Do you think in the future, for example, we can see something like the apps being built on the Mina Foundation, on the Mina blockchain, or would we only always be with snaps?
So definitely, we think of snaps actually as, it's kind of like dApps, like, with extra features. So, yes, you should be able to do any kind of dApp related thing that you want to with snaps. And yes, so yeah, I mean, I think that, like, yes.
Okay, all right, awesome, thank you. Another question from the community. A lot of people, in the previous months, they heard that Mina did, like, a jointly created Ethereum Foundation with the Mina Foundation cooperation. Can you tell us a bit more how that's going? Is there any update or a roadmap on that?
Yeah, so it just takes a long time to get proposals through to, like, okay, like, let's, like, make it happen. I hope that we'll have something more to, like, share on this very soon, but I think things are, like, pretty close with having a tangible, substantial update there, but I don't have anything, like, right now. But things are, going basically well. We just have to yet to reach the milestone where we can, like, announce the next step.
Okay, so you're basically working on that, and hopefully once we reach that milestone, we will be able to move on to that step.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. What would you say is the most important use case for Mina? Most important, in your opinion, of course,
Yeah. I think that there's, like, I have two answers to this. Like, one is, like, if we're thinking, like, kind of practical cryptocurrency, like, today, I think that snaps are the answer to this question, because I think that the ability to integrate sensitive information into dApps are going to be a key component in enabling dApps to scale to real world users. And I don't know, like, whether that's like your credit score, or whether it's like your email, I don't, there's like so many possibilities, but I think that's like crypto, once it's like kind of not just like in a walled garden of like things in crypto and can explain to the world, I think it's going to be like very, very impactful. I think like the thing that I am more excited about that, but I think is longer term vision for Mina, is the ability for Mina to be so accessible. I think that cryptocurrency is really, I think, grappling with a lot of questions of like individual, collective, like institutional power right now. And I think that like it'll be the most impactful if we as individuals can really be like kind of integrated into what that future looks like. And I think that the technology is really important in making that happen. And so I think just like the ability to not have layers of separation between the technology and users is going to be impactful. But I think where the space is right now, it's going to take a little bit of time for that to play out.
Okay, so basically that's a bit on the Mina roadmap right now, and it's probably going to take a bit of time, but you're working on it,
Yeah, I think it also take time for like cryptocurrency and like the space to like, get into a place where cryptocurrency is widespread enough and impactful enough that it starts to matter who is controlling these things more and more. I think that there's like, there's development timelines, and there's also like kind of the space evolving to a place where this can have a lot of leverage. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. One personal question. What do you think about NFTs and DeFi? Do you think those two will ever play a role in the Mina blockchain?
Yeah, like I think that for now, I think I mostly think of ways that snaps can add additions to both of those. I think that in particular, if we're thinking of DeFi, I think DeFi has a lot to potentially gain by access to like what could be like a sensitive information. Like a very simple example of this is like credit scores, but another example could be like a proof that I'm holding a certain amount of collateral on an exchange, or that I have some collateral that's not in crypto that I want to prove something about. Like that's kind of a very basic primitive for finance, but I think that snarks and snaps have a lot to add there. I think for NFTs also, they're like, I think the example I come back to this is like there's like that whole like what's it called? I don't there's like there's like the Twitter thing with like the NFTs that like is like centralized and like is got a lot of flack recently for just being centralized and like kind of scammy. But anyway, I forget what it's called. But like you could do a version of that with Mina that doesn't have a lot of those concerns, that can directly check that I am the user that posted this tweet. This tweet hasn't been claimed yet, and I want to turn it into an NFT. And it can all be decentralized on chain. And you can construct like pretty cool NFTs out of both social information and any online information that don't have any central parties. So I think that BitClout is the name of it. So I think that like we're seeing a lot of kind of prototypes of things that have a lot of potential, but once they really get into crypto and can be more decentralized, then I think we can see even more there. And I think that's another place where snaps can come into play. So basically to say like, I think both of these, there's lots of rooms for Mina to get involved. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. So, just a lot of hype going on those two. So a lot of people wanted to know how the Mina Foundation, the Mina blockchain can be involved in that. So thank you a lot for telling us about that. We also have a question I received from Farah. She said that she would like to ask you it herself. Let me see if I can find her in the community, if she joined the call. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Hi, Ivan.
Hello.
Thank you for for your input. I just had one question that I would like to ask you. Well, we've seen that the Mina is already partnered with Teller Finance. And my question is, are there any plans to see new collaborations of Mina with other blockchain projects?
So the answer is yes, but I don't have any I can share at this time. So it's kind of a boring answer, sorry, but there definitely are, and I hope that we can share them more soon.
It's okay. Thank you for the answer. I'm excited. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Farah. So you kind of gave us a teaser right there, said that there's something that we can expect coming soon, right?
There's always things in progress, right? So like, yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for the question. Does anyone in the community have a question that they would like to ask even themselves? If you want, you can raise your hand and then we can unmute you so you can ask the question directly. Camera, if you don't want, you could just turn on your mic. Okay.
Hi, Evan. Thank you very much for coming into our community and giving us a chance to ask some questions. My question is particularly about the zero knowledge proof technology and that Mina blockchain uses. And I'm interested to know, like, what are the future applications that you yourself are looking forward to seeing like develop in the future?
That's a good question. So I think in particular for me, I'm excited about the opportunities for integrating Mina back into the internet, so that websites can take advantage of zero knowledge proofs, both to prove things about how they are running, and so that I can give limited information to the websites I'm using. Like, I think that like there's a lot of services right now. Like I've signed off Facebook as of recently for theoretically forever, and like I don't like using those services, but I see a lot of value in them. And I would love if it was possible to engage with these with a little more privacy and a little more kind of what feels to me like kind of respect for the user from these entities. So that's something I'm really excited about. Yeah.
I have signed up myself from Facebook. I disabled it like for a few months now, so I can relate to what you're talking about. Thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on and asking a question. Let me see. If anyone wants to ask even a question, you can go ahead or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. If not, we will move over to the Q&A in the chat. And then you can ask your question in the chat and then Ivan can read it or I can read it. Okay? So we will be unmuting the chat right now and then you can post your question. Okay? Is that fine with you, Ivan?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I've unmuted the chat and now people will be posting some questions and then you can pick which question you would like. So please, if you have a question that you would like to ask Ivan without turning on your mic, please post it in the chat. And then Ivan can go over the questions and answer one. Okay, give them a minute.
I'm just going to start answering. Or actually, okay, should I give a minute for people to type more things, or should I just like start answering questions?
Yeah, give it a minute. So anyone, if you have a question that you would like to ask Ivan directly, please post it in the chat. And then Ivan can go over the questions and answer them. Thank you so much. Do you want to go over some of the questions?
Sure, yeah. Shall I just like read some out loud and go for it?
Yeah, sure.
Will there be alternative client implementations? So yes. So ChainSafe, I mentioned, is working on like a Rust version that will also compile to WASM. And that's like the main alternative client going on right now. And that one's particularly cool because that one will be able to run on, well, WASM works on like everywhere because it's just a browser thing. So that'll work on browsers, that'll work on phones, and there will be a lot of mileage out of that alternative client. Yes. So next question is, will there be auctions for the dApps on Mina, or is it an agnostic protocol, or both? I'm actually curious, like Davey, like what is, I maybe I'm just confused. I don't know what auctions for the dApps means, but yes, if you can clarify it, if you're in the chat, and I can answer. What is use case of Mina coin? What is it used for? So I'm gonna so we talked a lot about the use case of Mina Mina protocol and snaps and small blockchain. But one thing I think is useful to talk about, just like what is the point of the token, and there's a couple places there where the token is useful within the context of things I just mentioned. One is as a way of deciding who makes blocks and therefore who gets fees and inflation from the network. We can imagine that if enough time passes and there's a lot of fees going around the network, similar to how talk's been for Ethereum now, the Mina token gives you access to those fees proportionally, and therefore it is useful for that and useful for making blocks. Additionally, it's useful for the way that the Mina's snarks are used to compress the chain is there's an auction going on continuously to produce the snarks to compress the blockchain. And the Mina token is also used for that. As the unit for that auction. Mina is written in what language? What kind of projects can I start developing with Mina today? Mina is written in OCaml, and there will be a version of its smart contracting language written in JavaScript. And today, the projects you can make are mostly around infrastructure, so tools for running nodes, tools for payments, tools for getting GraphQL data from Mina to various places. When snaps are released, then you'll be able to do all the things I mentioned with snaps, where basically it's the same as rating a dApp, but you get access to privacy and you get access to theoretically some more scale, depending on how you write your application. I also saw Davey posted. So maybe I need to investigate more because I'm not exactly familiar with the paradigm options, maybe as much as I should be. So unfortunately, like happy to, if anyone wants to clarify, I could like try to answer, but I may not be able to.
There's a lot of questions, so you can just answer the ones you're comfortable with. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So questions on Binance and CoinList. So one of the things that is both kind of like, I think, really awesome and fascinating about crypto is that, like, we're like, the blockchain is like independent. Like even being at the foundation, like our goal is just to like help the project. We don't like, the protocol is the protocol. And with that, like, I don't know answers to these. Like I think reach out to them directly, and that's their best bet because yeah, like both Binance and Coin, I don't know.
Definitely.
Where will snaps be stored on the blockchain, considering that Mina is supposed to be 22 kilobytes, large, build to verify blocks, etc.? Wouldn't snaps increase that size drastically? So what snaps do effectively is they add some extra fields to accounts. They add a field for the account for storing what's called the verification key, which determines, in effect, what kind of program you use to update that account. And it adds some field for storing data in the account that is limited, but we're considering what it would look like to have dynamic storage in the future. So snaps increase marginally the amount of data per account, and therefore the amount of data to run a consensus node. You don't have to store any actual history because of this, but you still have to store the verification key in each account for the current set of accounts for consensus nodes. However, if we're just a user, we're not running a staking node, we're just trying to access the network in a secure way, all you need to be able to do still is download the proof and the paths down to individual accounts. And so it doesn't increase the amount of data required to do that. You'll still be able to get secure access to Mina for using this proof. Why Mina is inflationary. Any particular use cases that require more and more coins to be in circulation supply. So we touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
The main idea behind inflation is we want to be able to make sure there's enough incentives for running staking. So that's the main use case at the moment. And in time, inflation can go down as you're confident that inflation will continue, that staking will continue to be incentivized. Okay.
Thank you for answering.
Okay. When do you think voting on a US election will be done with the help of blockchain tech? This is really interesting to me because, like, I do think that at some point this could make sense, at least if you imagine, like, we're still going to have paper voting, but we're going to, like, couple it for auditability, but we're going to couple it with a blockchain for speed, basically, and for doing it in a way that's actually verifiable.
Wow.
So
we can. Sorry, do you think we can see that in the foreseeable future?
No, I mean,
use case.
I mean, I think we can see it in a future. I think if I think about the technology trends, I think this is something that makes sense to happen eventually. I don't know when. I think that it's really interesting to me to think about US politics because they are so they don't necessarily operate from a place of, like, kind of pure rationality. But, like, I do think eventually this is something that, even if it doesn't, that will be talked about very seriously as this technology gets more integrated, which I think, may sound crazy, but I think, like, that's where this technology goes eventually. Yeah.
Hopefully. Awesome.
Yep. Do you think ZK proofs could be used for authentication purposes? For example, to avoid KYC, but ensuring you have a valid identification document? Yes. So I think this is kind of an inevitable next step for Mina, and not for Mina, but for the space in general, but also something that Mina probably can help a lot with, is that I think both for organizations that want to make sure they're being really regulatorily compliant in the future as requirements increase, and just for, like, being able to use your identity for different uses on chain, it's going to be really helpful to be able to do things like KYC on chain don't actually involve revealing that sensitive information on chain. So I think this is, like, a very kind of promising use case specifically for Mina and snaps, and something that the space is going to find really useful. Okay. Do you think snaps is Web 4? So someone asked this actually on a recent AMA I did, and I was kind of surprised to think, like, yes, I do. Like, if Web 3 starts bringing some of the guarantees of cryptocurrency and payments, trustlessness to the web, I think that zero knowledge proofs start to bring features of privacy, features of verifying information that really start feeling like Web 4. Like I talked a minute earlier about what it could look like to use an internet that use zero knowledge proof so that I don't have to reveal all my information to, some adversarial entity. That feels very Web 4 to me. So yes, I think that feels right. Hi, Evan. Do you have any favorite Snaps app? I've mentioned a few that I think are like kind of promising as use cases. I want to mention some I think are kind of like fun. I think in particular, like the ability for Snaps to engage with and interact and incentivize activity on the internet seems really, really interesting to me. Like one thing that I could imagine is deploying a token on top of a social network like Twitter, where it's kind of all decentralized with the chain, but the chain is interacting with Twitter to know what users are saying and then to make transactions on their behalf off chain, which is like kind of awful in some sense because Twitter is then in this very privileged position, but I think is like a fun use case. It's kind of cool. Will we be able to vote on grants the foundation gives in the future? So we're actively thinking through both how we want to include the community in determining what process we do for this and what that process should look like. So the answer is yes. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into it to make sure we're doing this in a really thoughtful way, I think. But that is the intent and the direction. And really, I think the goal at the end of the day is, can we kind of have the foundation design itself in such a way that it almost doesn't need to exist anymore, but in some sense it is a function of what the community wants and what the community wants to work on. So I think there's kind of a, there's a there's a lot of work that has to go into making sure we do that in a thoughtful way that works, but that's where we want to end up. Okay. If someone found a serious exploit to point out outside of HackerOne, would you consider employing them to help Mina development? I think potentially. I think that they would probably need to be reporting it inside of HackerOne because that's just like the flow. And it'd be kind of weird if they weren't and would raise some questions around maybe, but maybe not. I don't know exactly. But I think this is something that could, like, we definitely are thinking towards, like, great people that can help out with things like security and yeah. Can we see Mina development definitely working with mobile by next year? And would you be interested in implementing gaming to possibly earn crypto, which is becoming a trend? So I can see it. I can see mobile working by next year. The word definitely is like, it's always hard when you're thinking about development timelines. I do think that something in that landscape will be working by then, whether it's not the full chain safe WASM thing we've been talking about or something else. I do think that will exist. And in terms of gaming, I think, yes, this is actually something we thought a lot about early on in Mina, is what can we do to make experiences that take advantage of Mina's technology but are also really fun? Because I think I grew up on Newgrounds and Miniclip, if anyone remembers those Flashbook sites.
Yeah.
And I think it's both really good for onboarding people to an ecosystem, and it's just, I think, a fun thing to contribute. So I am interested in this for sure. Yeah.
It'll be awesome.
Yep.